And all of the AIA Austin staff, we welcome you to 2019 Summer Conference. We expect the next 2 days to inspire your work, inform your practice, and hopefully feed your soul a little bit as well. And it's a great chance to reconnect with friends and colleagues every year. So welcome, everybody. We are honored to have Elaine Molinar, Partner and Managing Director of Snøhetta, as today's keynote speaker. But before we bring her up, I wanted to recognize and thank some of the sponsors. If you have a chance, please go by the expo and check out all the friends who are presenting there. Everyone in the expo is a supporter of the organization and provides quality products and services to help us in our work in architecture. Please thank them for being here. I'd like to recognize Dielectric Engineering and Innovatal. We'll be hosting a happy hour today at the expo at 5:30. Hope everyone will join us for that. And now I'd like to welcome and thank our keynote sponsor, Sarah Scott and JT Lanier of Dovetail Custom Wood and Metal. I believe JT is going to come speak to us in just a minute.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
I normally don't do this. I'm one of the guys who makes your designs reality. I'm a product engineer for Dovetail. I've been designing for the better part of 7 years now. The last 2 I've spent with my current company. It's really cool to be able to be here. I see a lot of y'all's names come across through emails, drawings, things like that. And it's nice to be able to put those names to faces. Some of y'all probably talked to me on the phone. I've been very lucky to be able to meet a couple of y'all in person who come out to our shop and see our production facility. Without further ado, so something we wanted to bring for this conference was showing a little bit about what we can do for you. We specialize in metal, wood, more recently stone, finishing, that kind of thing. So we wanted a piece that showed a little bit of that, got to flex our creative side of what we can do, and hopefully make a good impression for everybody. Dovetail has been around for a couple of years in the market. We've worked with a lot of you. Some of you, we'd like to work with you. We have a new facility that is out in Del Valle. For those of you who don't know where Del Valle is, it's about 20 minutes east of here as you're headed towards Bastrop. If you see 3 large metal buildings on the left side, that's us. We have about 60,000 square foot facility spread across 20 acres. Currently 3 buildings with 3 more currently being constructed for rapidly growing expansion. So this is what we brought here today. White oak seems to be very popular this year, so we wanted to show off some products using white oak. Various kinds of engineered stone, metal, whether it be hot rolled or cold rolled steel, brass, and some plastics. What they're currently building next door, we have sort of this sort of sculptural shape, white oak veneer panels, engineered stone, and obviously a blackened steel wall in the back. A lot of what we do, you don't typically see in the finished product. It's mostly all hidden underneath the skin. And something that we hope that you'll get to experience while you're here is see what actually works underneath all of our designs. That's what I'm good at doing. It's the engineering part of it. Not so much the design part, but it's fun to get to dabble in that kind of thing. So this is the inner structure of what we've been working on. We're hoping that we'll have one panel off so y'all can see, kind of what it looks like. Because usually what happens is y'all will send over like a Revit model or something like that. I'll pull into some of the software that we use and sort of flesh it out from there. Because when I see it, it's more or less a 3D solid, and I figure out how to sort of make that solid look like reality by the time you put something on it. We use a combination of Microvell, County Vision, Fusion 360. Obviously Revit, and for those who need export out for BIM, Navisworks. So this is sort of just quick little overview of our structure. Nothing too crazy. Sarah, our director of marketing, told me to design some kind of fitness space at 10 by 10. Didn't have a whole lot of information outside of that, so I might have gone just a little too crazy with that. But yeah, so that's us. I look forward to talking and meeting with all of y'all. And if you have some time, hop on next door later today and take a look at what we can do and can do for you. Thank you.
So we're thrilled to have Elaine Molinar here today. AIA Austin and the Austin Foundation for Architecture currently are on a path to establish a new cultural institution, the Center for Architecture. That's sort of a placeholder name for now. Here in Austin, which will be the new home for the nonprofit wing of AIA and AIA itself. And Elaine, we're hoping, is going to really add a lot of fuel to our fire. Snøhetta really has done incredible groundbreaking work in creating cultural institutions, and that's the goal here at AIA Austin as well. Their firm has been leading a conversation on placemaking and cultural projects that transform entire cities and define even countries. Elaine's work includes major cultural projects all over the world, including the first Snøhetta project, the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. Elaine has notably worked on the Norwegian National Opera and Ballet, the September 11th Memorial Museum Pavilion, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Calgary Public Library, and the list really goes on and on. Snøhetta, as a firm, has received the Ecotone Award for Architecture, the Mies van der Rohe European Union Prize for Architecture, the World Architecture Award, the Global Award for Sustainable Architecture, and the European Prize for Public Space. Elaine is a University of Texas alum and a native of El Paso. Elaine revealed to us that this is also the first time she's presented in Austin, so it's a very special occasion for us. We're so thrilled to have you here, Elaine. Please welcome Elaine up to the stage. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear?
Yes.
All right. I'll just start by telling you a little bit about our company name. What you're looking at is the Snøhetta mountain in central Norway. It's part of the Dovrefjell mountain range, which establishes the border between northern and southern Norway. Snøhetta, the Snøhetta mountain, which is the name of the mountain, exactly right there, is the highest mountain in the Dovrefjell region. Our first studio in central Oslo, downtown Oslo, is in the top floor of an old loft office building, and beneath us on the ground was a bar called Dovrehall. Snøhetta, the mountain, is the highest place in the Dovre region, and our studio was the highest thing over the Dovrehall bar. So that's why we called ourselves Snøhetta. And this year we are celebrating our 30th year of practice. As architects, we often find ourselves focused on the object for I think a lot of very good reasons, but it's often the places in between, the transitions, the ill-considered or the unconsidered places that actually form our experience and memories of the built environment. I have some early training as a dancer, as a ballet dancer, and one of the things I learned is that the big dramatic poses and movements are not really successful if how you get in and out of them is not equally well considered as the big moves. And I think the built environment is similar in many ways to that. It's the transitions and thresholds that are important and should be equally as considered as the objects that they relate to. This is a very small project for a competition that we won for the International Garden Festival in Quebec, outside of Montreal. It's a little garden folly. that is specifically looking at the microenvironments that boundaries create. Because once you draw a line, we inevitably begin to consider our relationship to it. I think we've seen a lot of that lately, and especially here in Texas. This is just two intersecting lines which sit at the threshold of the forest, the boreal forest, and the meadow. There is even a specific set of species in both plant and animals that thrive in this specific in-between environment. It's called an ecotone. It's very simple. It's two arcs, two steel arcs that support a weave of a rope that transition from vertical in the forest to horizontal in the meadow. And it's just simply highlighting that unique place where you get both shade and sun and unique vegetation as it transitions from one world to another. The Oslo Opera House, which we built between 2000 and 2008 as competition-winning entry, is an example of architecture as landscape and landscape as a social catalyst. There aren't any clear boundaries here either. They're all working together in unison, architecture, landscape, and urban design. This project was 100% funded by taxpayer money, and so we felt it was important to create civic space, public space that the non-theater going public could enjoy. It wasn't asked for in the program, but we found it was extremely important to the design that we wanted to create. And in fact, there was no site, there wasn't enough ground to do that, so we extended the building and the plaza out over the water into the fjord. So the plazas and the roofs, which are also accessible, also function as a landscape that people use every day, all year round. It even hosts public events. This is a simulcast of the opera Carmen, which is happening inside in the theater room in February, so it got quite a large turnout for that. But this is the Justin Bieber concert, which got probably 3 or 4 times as many people. Glad to do service. He wasn't even allowed to be on the opera itself. He was protected out on a barge in the water. The public lobbies in this building are open outside of opera hours and also are host to a number of impromptu or unscheduled performances. This just happens without warning. This particular scene is in front of a beautiful backdrop, which was one of the integrated art projects by Olafur Eliasson. It's a cladding in front of the public restrooms. There are cafes and a shop, of course, in the opera, and this really is more of a public passage that just happens to have a theater in it. You can see people walking on the outside. One of the aspects of successful theaters we found is the ability to sort of socialize and people watch. A lot of the great opera houses like the Semper Opera in Dresden or the Garnier Opera in Paris have all these wonderful foyers of varying size and scales, and they are at different levels, and you can see views across to other people or reflections of yourself in the mirror. And because part of the theater experience is not just what's happening on stage, but what's happening outside of the theater. And we wanted to create that same kind of experience on the outside as well. So people are always just walking all over the roof and peering into the glass down at the lobby. People in the lobbies are looking back out. And people are just really even not coming to the theater. They're just coming here to spend the afternoon and to do the kinds of things that people do in parks, in public parks. You're always aware of where you are in relation to other people and where you are in the city. It's one of the few places in central Oslo where you can get up high enough to have a kind of a broad view of the city and see where you are. There are even people who have no interest in the opera or the ballet come here daily to use this public space. think for me, one of the most important things that we did in this project, and I think it's probably its greatest impact, is cleaning up the fjord, the environment, in order to build out over the water, because the plaza extends into the water. In order to build those piers and support the plaza, we had to remove and contain over 60,000 tons of heavy metal waste in the water, because this had been an active harbor for hundreds of years, until only very recently. So wildlife that had not been seen in this part of the fjord is now coming back. So rather than development displacing wildlife, in this case, it has actually increased its presence. And since the opera opened in 2008, both revenue and attendance have increased over 200%. For the last decade, we've been working with the Department of Design and Construction on Times Square in the area known as the Bow Tie, which is between 42nd and 47th Street here, where Broadway and 7th Avenue cross over each other. This is where the ball drops on New Year's Eve, and this is that well-known red ticket stand where you can go and buy tickets to the show. This was, I think we all know that Times Square is pretty much a mess, and it's been a kind of a sea of chaos. It's one of the most heavily trafficked public areas in the world, with over 1 million people every day coming to Times Square doing any number of things. It's one of those places that tourists love because it's exciting and there's all kinds of crazy things to see. But it's a place that New Yorkers love to hate and avoid it as best they can. And this is the way it looked 10 years ago. It was clearly just a general sea of chaos, and cars and pedestrians were having a hard time coexisting, and it was just kind of a nightmare. This was an early image of what we wanted it to be like. And I think one of the reasons that we got this commission was because we didn't propose to do all that much. We didn't want to add anything to Times Square, because you really don't need to add anything more to what's already there. But what we did want to do was create kind of a grounding and have a quiet backdrop, so that all of those exciting neon signs and billboards and costumed dancers and people could come more into focus and be more visible, actually. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out first what was going on there. This is just a map that shows all of the uses of Times Square. So shopping, food, work. The theaters actually are the smallest component, which are the green, some of these green areas, because most of the theaters are off on the cross streets, on the side streets. They're not actually on Broadway. We spent a lot of time observing just exactly what people were doing, and it was pretty amazing. There were groups of little kids sitting on a curb, basically in traffic, eating their lunch. People were using standpipes to put their trash on because there weren't enough trash cans. People sitting on the ground, selling stuff, leaning on newspaper stands. They were just kind of, everything happening everywhere. This was the traffic before the traffic was diverted. So all of the crosstown traffic, Broadway and 7th Avenue, and all generally colliding at these various pinch points. And a lot of people actually were getting hit by cars. That was not an unusual thing to happen in Times Square. Before we started our work, the city had undertaken a temporary measure to test out what it would mean to close the traffic on Broadway. So at 47th Street, you have to divert and then go down 7th Avenue only before you get back onto Broadway below 42nd Street. All of the crosstown traffic remains intact. And then by the time we started our work, there was a decision to keep that traffic diversion as a permanent thing. And what that did for us was it created these very large triangular areas over here, which could be devoted to pedestrians. So suddenly there was quite a large area for public space. did do in our design here was we created custom paving in all of these areas. We lifted up the curbs at the intersections of the cross traffic, so you don't have to step down and then back up off the street. And we installed these benches are massive granite stone benches, about 50 feet long. Some of them are 50 feet long. And we put them in these plaza areas. So all of these things work together to help define the geometry of the plaza. In fact, and our work was limited to the ground plane. About 2/3 of the budget for the work here is used below grade. Because there's a lot of infrastructure below that needed to be addressed. So these are looking at the benches that we installed here in Times Square. The thing about a place like this is that random motion rules everything all the time. But by installing these long benches, people do tend to gravitate towards them. So they tend to concentrate people off to the sides and then leave more free area in the middle. So it's a little less chaotic. Here's a close-up of the custom paving. It's a granite and concrete paving, and we inserted these little reflective pucks, stainless steel discs, which reflect light. So there's a lot of light generated from all of the billboards in neon, and we didn't really need or want to add any more light. However, by aligning these pucks on the pavers, they reflect light, so it's another signal that tells you that you're in a car-free zone, that you're in a pedestrian place. Those benches were designed to accommodate a number of different ways of sitting. So sitting, standing, leaning, perching, something for everybody. And some of them are even equipped with power and data. Because there's a lot of activity that happens in Times Square. It might be yoga or a rodeo or a concert. And the power and data in those benches are, what they do is that they eliminate the need of having a truck on the plaza with the cables dragging across the street. So you can pull right up and connect to the benches. Dogs like Times Square too. People just hanging out. I think here you see the before and after side by side. That's a photograph, not a rendering. Actually, you can't tell the difference anymore these days, but that is actually a photograph. So there's a little more calm in order to what there was before. The majority of our work is complete now, although there are ongoing tasks that we've been doing. Unfortunately, every time there is a terrorist event, we are asked to look at more stricter security, for example, designing in more bollards to parts of the pedestrian plaza areas. But there has been a tangible, measurable improvement in the quality of life on the streets in Times Square here. Rents have gone up, property values have gone up, the pollution has gone down, fewer people are being hit by cars. So overall, in general, it's just an improvement to the quality of life here. I think, and tourists still love Times Square, and maybe New Yorkers don't hate it quite as much as they used to. And it generates quite a serious amount of revenue for the city of New York still. Right now, we are working on one of Manhattan's most iconic buildings. This is Philip Johnson's the former AT&T Tower. This building was new when I was a student here in the mid-'80s. I remember there was quite a lot of chatter about this. No one had ever seen anything quite like it. But all that chatter was primarily about the top of the building. There wasn't much discussion about what it was actually contributing to the city at the ground level, at the street level. It's located in Midtown, and in this part of Midtown, in that red square there is a shortage of open public green space. even though most New Yorkers, 99% of New Yorkers actually live within a 10-minute walk of a park. But this neighborhood is particularly barren in terms of public space. Our work with the AT&T tower is focused on that, which I'll show you in a bit. But it is falling short of the criteria that has been set for public green space. Even by Philip Johnson's own admission, the ground plan of this building is not a success. I'm actually missing a slide which would show you more of an overview, but what it is there's the tower, and then behind the tower there's a public passageway, and then next to that passageway there's a small annex building, which is part of the original design, and it was part of a give back to the city in exchange for being able to build a taller tower and for being able to build beyond the setbacks on Madison Avenue and the side streets. One of the things that building over the setback allowed was to create these arcades. That give back was to the city that public passage and more public space. By Philip Johnson's own admission, it was not successful. It was dark, it was cold, it was gloomy. The arcades weren't really functioning as arcades should. They very, very rarely do. And there's on the right, you can see this is on the left, that's the original public passage with this big vaulted glass roof. Over the years, improvements have been made, presumably to make it more hospitable. And at some point in the early 90s, these lamps were added and these retail kiosks became more prominent. And then eventually in the mid-90s, which is the current situation today, they've added even more prominent kiosks and these lighting grids so that they can have events and then do have technical lighting and other things. Here is the situation as it was, and then I'll show you what we're doing at ground level. The original design shows everything in green here is the public space that Philip Johnson gave back, that the design gave back to the city in exchange for that added height and extending over the setbacks and creating those arcades. And here you can see the annex building at the back. Eventually, all of that public space was, most of it anyway, was removed. The arcades were maintained. The entrance setback, that little entry foyer still exists. But then all of this was more or less enclosed. That was more or less enclosed space. And then here's the drawing of what we were planning to do, which we're currently working with, is to double the amount of public outdoor space at the back. We are able to get rid of the annex. That annex building was meant to have a cultural component, and originally it was kind of an AT&T showroom. And then AT&T only stayed in the building about 4 years, and after that Sony moved in, and their use of the annex was just kind of a showroom for Sony products, basically. So not really a cultural component. The building was designed for a single tenant, so the elevators and the cores and the floor plates all work well for a single tenant, but subdividing it up into multi-tenant use results in greatly reduced floor plates. So it's been tough. That building has been totally empty for the last 5 years. So here we're planning to double that amount of green space, and one of the important changes that we're making is to take this wall of elevators and reorient them 90 degrees so that when you come into the building through the lobby, you can see out into the garden. Here's a closer view of the garden. We are adding public restrooms. We still have a vehicular ramp and loading. There's parking below that. But we're creating quite a big garden here. And we are reducing the amount of enclosed retail and concentrating it at the street, at the sidewalks. We're adding more trees, we're adding bike parking, public restrooms, more seating, tables. It will have a program for art, for artists, for like a curated art program. And it will also have a fairly long blooming season so that there will always be changing vegetation and not a lot of period of total dormancy. So this is what it is now, what it is today. This is in fact a public space, but the only clue that you get that tells you that is that it says here that this is a public arcade. These big planters don't really help you, don't really invite you in. There's glass is rarely transparent, so it's just reflective and dark and pretty imposing. And this is the annex building here. This is what we're proposing in the back. You notice that that vaulted roof up here has been dropped down lower, so even though it is lower, it is in fact more intimate. So we're proposing this glass and steel canopy back here, and by removing the annex, we're able to use all of that space for garden space. No barriers in the front, so this is clearly a public zone. There is the original, this is what it is like today, and this is what it will be moving forward. Now, as soon as we proposed these changes and some other minor alterations to the facade, there was suddenly a lot of controversy and discussion about the building being landmarked, which it ultimately was. Now, up until then, it had been deemed to be not one of Philip Johnson's best examples and not worthy of landmark status, but as soon as we started proposing these design changes, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of controversy, and a race to get it landmarked, which it ultimately was. But we are still able to move forward with the work that we are proposing. Our work has been approved. So here is some other views of the garden. About almost 5 years ago now, we won a competition for a public library in Calgary. And right away, they told us that they weren't interested in getting the best library they could get. They were really just interested in getting the best library for Calgary. You know, what that meant, whatever that meant. But libraries are really important for us because we started our practice with a major library. And librarians are some of the most open-minded and innovative clients that we've ever had. It's a building typology that is constantly evolving. And the libraries that we design today are very different, significantly different from the first library we designed 30 years ago. It's just amazing to see that constant evolution. You know, for us, even though libraries have books and they house information, they're not really about books. They're not really about how comfortable seating arrangements you can get, or how many game stations, or you know, anything like that. They really are about, especially public libraries, democratizing knowledge and access to everybody for opportunity. And librarians understand this, and I think they're constantly looking for ways to make that better. They underwent a significant public engagement program for, I think, the 2 years leading up to the design competition. They involved 16,000 local residents. But Calgary has the second largest library system in Canada and the 6th largest municipal library system in North America. So over half the population of Calgary itself has a library membership, so that's about 750,000. So they really like their libraries. They offered quite a lot of feedback. They were very engaged, and then we took all of that information once we designed the competition, you know, we used that as our starting point for our design. In addition to that, we were also confronted with a fairly significant design challenge. The library site is quite long and narrow in the center of Calgary. This is the Calgary City Hall right here, and a quite active pedestrian area of downtown Calgary. The problem was not only was the site very long and narrow, it has their light rail line running right through the middle of it. It's running through an arc, and it transitions from above grade over here to a tunnel down here. So the challenge we faced was not only dealing with those physical constraints, but that light rail train had to remain in complete uninterrupted operation during the entire construction process. So here you can see that there's the site, there's the light rail, and 8th Avenue is a pedestrian, highly used pedestrian corridor downtown, goes through Olympic Plaza. There's a lot of activity going on down here, and over here, the East Village is this kind of nice up-and-coming neighborhood along the river. And these two areas were cut off from each other because of the train line. So you can see that it just cut off a significant portion, important portion of the city from the central area. So right where the paths would normally want to just continue on through, that couldn't happen anymore because of the train line. And where all of those pathways would normally naturally converge, which is where we wanted to make a public space and entry for the library, suddenly became pretty challenging. But often, what happens when you can't solve something in plan, you can very likely solve it in the section. So what we did was to encapsulate the library rail line down here and lift the library above that. We created this topographical landscape up here, which functioned as a bridge between the East Village and City Hall and the rest of Central Calgary, and put the entrance to the library in that space. That's where all of these paths might naturally converge. We lifted up the ground and made the entry plaza here to the library. It has some other public learning. There's an auditorium and cafe which have direct access from the street over here. This is also a site that has exposure on all sides, so there's no back. It's a building with no backside, which is kind of difficult. So we were looking for a form which would work with the geometry of the site and that rail line, but also appear to be the front from no matter which way you approached it. So you didn't feel like you were coming to the back of the building or walking into the loading dock. The inspiration for that form came from many different places. This is an ancient Roman oil lamp, which has these beautiful curves and no backside, no front, no back. And what we like to think, we imagine to think, illuminated some of our original libraries. And that's an early model from the competition phase. See, we kind of kept those curves in the design. We were inspired by local indigenous artists and their work, inspired some of our early facade studies for the building here. This is from the early concept phase. It's very much like that, not exactly. And a weather phenomenon called the Chinook Arch, which is very particular to this part of North America, but very, very specific to Alberta in particular. This happens quite a lot. They're created by distant coastal winds, and they form these beautiful arches, which also gave us inspiration for that overall arching form. This is from the East Village facing towards town. So now instead of that barrier, you have an entrance, some steps and an elevator that take you up to the entry plaza. You could just go right on through and continue your way downtown or go into the library. The organization of the library inside is fairly standard and conventional. It has the more public, more open, lively functions down low, and as you progress up the building, it gets more quiet, more studious, more concentrated, more focused. They are organized, the reading areas are organized around the central atrium, which is skylit. And no matter where you are, with the stairs just kind of spiraling around, no matter where you are, you can find your way to a window or to the skylight and see out. So you always have a view and natural light. So more images like And also it's important that these spaces are versatile so that the library can have community events, fundraisers, whatever they need to do. This is one of the ceremonies for the opening. And this is a popular place to sit, to perch in the building. You can see all the way down the street here to the City Hall. You can see up over to the rest of the library here, and you have an overlook of the children's library. Because of that, somebody dubbed it the Mother's Stairs, so that's what it's called. Even though, yeah. And so this is the children's library that you're looking at down here. The children's library, in addition to little reading areas, has a small play tower, climbing tower. It has stroller parking and quiet areas where parents can be with their babies. This is Calgary's pretty far north, and we really wanted to capture that quality of light from those latitudes on the interior of the building. And the facade, which has these wide sweeping curves, has a design of these hexagonal facade panels, which help give you that broad panoramic view, but also helps breaks down the scale because the building is quite large, the facade is quite large, and it also helps negotiate the curves. So anytime we can avoid a curved facade panel, we do. Up at the top, on the top floor, there is a quiet reading room, which is behind this wood screen at the top of these stairs. There's no sign or anything else that explicitly tells you that you need to be quiet in here other than the materials and the furniture and the acoustics. And the general character of the room tells you that this is a quiet, traditional library space. The quality of construction in Canada has been exceptionally high on all of the work that we've done in Canada, which is just amazing and enjoy to work with, especially to get these really smooth, sharp concrete corners and joints between the wood. All of the wood on the interior is Western hemlock, except the floor, which is oak. But better than that, it's actually more rewarding and important when you have happy visitors and people feel actually at home in the library. And it's the most important thing with a public library is actually to get people in the door and make them feel at home and like it's their place. This is the last project I'm going to show you. It has some similarities to the first project I showed you, in that it also deals with that transitional space between, here in this case, between the land and the shore and the horizontal direction, and between the being under the water and over the water in the vertical direction. This is an underwater restaurant on the southern tip of Norway in a place called Lindesnes. And this is just a large concrete tube. It's about 110 feet long and 30 feet wide. And it's just plunging into the ocean and resting on the seabed. The concrete itself is treated with a rough surface so that it can act as an artificial reef, and with the hope that the wildlife that was displaced by its footprint will then be replaced on its surfaces. It's the approach from the land side. And it's pretty straightforward when you look at it like this as a drawing. If it weren't for all the water, but it's about 15 feet deep. There is, more important than fine dining, I think, is actually the role it plays in facilitating marine research. So the restaurant itself welcomes researchers who are studying fish populations and marine biology. There's a bunch of equipment, sensors, and other things that help them study populations and the biological conditions with the aim of improving marine resource management. The restaurant only serves up to 40 people, so that's a pretty exclusive place. But you can sit here and have this beautiful picture window, look out, and see the marine life as you eat them at the same time. That's it. All right.
Do you want to take a few questions?
Sure. Yes.
I would love to know.
Should I throw this to you?
Uh,
I've got a terrible aim.
yeah. Wait. So I'll throw it to the next person.
Yeah.
I would love to know, just briefly, I don't have much time, what the journey's been like since you did that first library, then the upstairs, then that small place, when you started your practice to now. I'd just love to know what that was like.
Oh my God, yeah, kind of a roller coaster. After we won that competition for the library, it took us 4 years to get the contracts to do the work. And during those 4 years, we had very little work. The economy wasn't great at that time, and a lot of us were on unemployment, but also, working, trying to make things happen. We finally got a small project, an art museum in Lillehammer for the '94 Olympics. But most of our work for the first number of years was in Norway, and that was kind of getting struck by lightning. And 10 years later, we won the opera competition. Was like getting struck by lightning again, which we didn't think would happen. And by that time, we had sort of accumulated more work. We were doing more work. Almost all of it, a few exceptions, was in Norway. And I think it wasn't until 2004 when we got our commission at the World Trade Center that we really started to kind of branch out. So it's kind of a weird thought to think that it was September 11th that helped us establish a global practice. Kind of a humbling thought, I think. Yeah, there we are. We have the same ups and downs that any other practice has in this country with, too much work, not enough work, crazy clients, great clients, got it all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really like your work very much.
Thank you.
Who's next?